As president, you'd be in charge pretty much single-handedly of America's foreign policy. So with that in mind, I have to ask you about Ukraine. So in the spring, you described the war in Ukraine as a, quote, territorial dispute. You issued a statement saying it was a territorial dispute that was not central to America's national interest. There was an outcry over this, and then pretty soon after you seemed to change your view and describe Putin as a war criminal and say that it was central to America's foreign policy. Why did you change, and where are you now?
So the last part I did not say. I served in Iraq during the Iraq campaign in Fallujah. I was attached to U.S. Navy SEAL Team 1. And remember, it started on WMD. Then we had al-Qaeda in Iraq. And so the lesson that I learned from there is if you're going to commit to do military, whether it's aid or whether it's troops, you need to have a concrete idea of what you're trying to achieve. And so from the time I got out of the sandbox and landed back in the United States 15 years ago until the present, I've always felt that. And so my critique of the DC foreign policy elite is that they are doing a blank check policy without telling us when we will have achieved our objective. And I believe that today, and I believe that then. Now, because you dissent from the DC foreign policy elite, they then try to smear you and say, oh, you must be for Putin. I've always thought Putin's a bad guy. I still think he's a bad guy. But that's a separate question for a leader who's got to look at the world in very clear-eyed glasses. You know that it's not all peaches and cream out there. And you have to make a judgment about what's in America's national interest. And so that's the position that I believe. And I also believe that I wish the DC elites cared as much about our border as they do about the Ukraine-Russia border. Because there's people pouring into this country. We have people dying from fentanyl overdose. The cartels are running the show. And what I've said is this is something on day one, declare a national emergency, mobilize all resources, including the military, stop the invasion, yes, build the wall, but most importantly, authorize the Border Patrol, authorize our military to deal with the cartels. If they're breaking into our country, bringing product, if I'm in charge, that's going to be the last thing they do because they're going to end up stone cold dead.
Amen. So what is the goal, do you think, in Ukraine? When do we know we've achieved it?
I think the goal should be to have a sustainable peace in Europe. Okay, we don't want there to be war breaking out. There have been a lot of people that have been killed, displaced. It's a horrible thing. My fear is right now is they're basically doing an open-ended conflict. This is going to be a multi-year quagmire. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to die, and there's not going to be much facts changed on the ground. And the dispute at this point, or the war at this point, is not whether Ukraine's government is going to fall. They're fighting over territory on the far eastern part of the country between Russia and Ukraine, and that's kind of where this is at. So the question is, okay, how do you get that to where we can stop this? And also, from our national interest, this is humiliating for our country that we're running out of ammunition. They're now trying to mobilize troops, U.S. troops, to go to Europe when we have a major threat in the Indo-Pacific, the Chinese Communist Party. As president, I would prioritize the threats to our national security. The top threat to this country is China. It's China's ambitions, it's China's industrial capacity, it's the CCP's ability to pollute our culture, impact our universities. Incidentally, in Florida, we got rid of the Confucius Institutes that they put in universities, and we banned any purchase of land by the CCP in the state of Florida. You have to do what's based on our interests. You can't subcontract out our interests to a foreign leader. You can't want it to go on because it'll be good for defense contractors or, globalist investors. It's all about what's in our interests. And I think we're basically in a situation with our foreign policy. We're providing a blanket security to Europe. They're not paying their fair share, and we're not doing what we need to do to project power in the Pacific. At the end of the day, the CCP respects hard power. And I'm concerned that because a strong America can deter conflict, I think a weak America may be on the path to inviting conflict with China. And if we continue to be weak abroad and allow our culture to deteriorate here at home, we can have a situation where our kids or grandkids are studying, memorizing 37 different pronouns in Mandarin, and we can't have that. So we've got to do better as a country. We need to reverse the decline of this country because it is happening very, very quickly.
So you inherit this mess a year and a half from now, say, and let's just say it's static, it's where it is right now. What do you do about it? Like, how do you act?
One, Europe needs to do more. This is their backyard. We have NATO countries that don't produce support for their own defenses. And the goal should be to bring it to a conclusion. You bring it to a conclusion in a way that's a sustainable peace and that doesn't reward aggression, and you have to be able to use different levers that you have. I mean, for example, one of the leverages I would use vis-a-vis Russia is I would do our own energy exploration and send it over to Europe so they don't have to rely on Putin. I would stop giving Iran a free pass like Biden is because they're funding Russia. So, but the goal should be we cannot have a quagmire that goes on for years and years. And seeing Biden put those troops there, I can tell you, we cannot have American troops in Ukraine. That is a total non-starter.
So why, I mean, you've got a whole Congress, and there are a ton of Republicans there. They claim they run the House. I haven't heard anybody say that. Why?
Well, I think there are some people that said you need to define the mission before you're able to send any American tax dollars over. And oh, by the way, they haven't even been able to account for all this. So we don't know who's coming across the southern border. We don't know where all the money sent to Ukraine has gone. We don't know whose cocaine it was in the White House. I mean,